Found in a chat.
Is Abhinav there?
Yes, ma'am.
I shared my presentation with her.
Yes, ma'am. I have it. I'll
Okay.
share it.
Yeah, thank you.
Hi, Akhila. Good to hear your voice.
Very nice, wonderful.
And a lighter vein, all these years you have been listening to me giving the talk, sitting on the other side. Today is the other way around.
Yes. Thank you. Thank you for giving me this opportunity. Very nice. Young
No, not
people.
at all. It will be quite useful for our students, I suppose. So, and maybe some of them may get enticed to help you with IT solutions. You never know.
Yes, plenty. That's the way. That's the way forward, actually.
Right. We'll give a couple of courtesy minutes for more people to join in, and then that's what we usually do.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Then I think Sudha or Abhinav will take over.
Yeah. Thank you.
I'll quietly sit and listen. I think it's Professor Rao there. Because there was a Senate meeting, I suppose. Abhinav?
Yes, sir. He would be joining a bit late.
Okay, yeah, because there was a Senate meeting going on.
Yes, sir.
So I think we could probably begin.
Sure, sir.
Huh? Yeah. Only thing, let me just give you a quick background. I've known Akhila for years now, and we came in contact with each other in the context of the campaign on the problem of declining sex ratios. And what struck me was her ability to really step up a campaign and essentially train young journalists. And it was very fruitful experience for me also. And later, I got dragged into some of their work related to procedural literacy for deprived and for people disadvantaged group. And I still vividly remember once we had gone to Anantapur, and that time I was in a fairly visible senior post in government of India, but I had just taken a casual leave so that I don't have to explain to anybody where I am going. We had gone to Anantapur and we were sitting and discussing with sex workers about the problem that they face from the system. And one of the workers remarked, and that still has stayed with me, that at least if these younger IS officers listen to our problem, things would be much easier. That was one remark which I wonder if Akhila remembers.
Yes.
I chuckled. And more importantly, one of them talked about Aadhaar card. And I said, what is the advantage of Aadhaar that you don't get, let's say, with ration card? And the lady told me, she said, साहब ये जो है ना ये duplicate नहीं हो सकता है, वो वाला duplicate भी हो जाता है. And I realized what procedural literacy can do to empower people. And here was a citizen kind of staking claim on her citizenship through this instrument. I had half a mind calling Nandan Nilekani that day and say, ki khush ho ja, your Aadhaar has done something useful. Though that phone call didn't materialize. But then we've been in touch on a number of issues. And I personally felt that this whole procedural literacy for citizens is something which can be a fairly powerful instrument. So Akhila will narrate about it. I'll request some students, if they may want to later get involved in this and probably help this procedural literacy aspect, maybe with the use of IT or even otherwise. I think that will be very useful. So I won't take more time. I think I'll hand over to Abhinav. He can introduce Akhila and then we can go ahead with the talk. Thank you very much, Akhila, for...
Thank you, Doctor.
Thank you, sir. So good evening to one and all. Welcome to the Sitara seminar series. Today with us, we have Ms. Akhila Sivadas. She is the Executive Director, Managing Trustee, and is a founder member of Center for Advocacy and Research, India. She has led the organization since 1998 and brings with her rich and varied experience in strengthening participatory processes and approaches in creating a level playing field for the many disadvantaged groups and populations. She has worked in a very granular way to facilitate the urban poor to improve their knowledge, aspiration, and collective effort to access and avail the social entitlements that is due to them. On behalf of the Sitara family, I welcome you, ma'am. And now we can proceed towards the session.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. on behalf of my entire team who also sort of entered, I'd really like to express my gratitude because despite a lot of connect happening between academic world and the world of, shall we say, world where you're actually working directly with the community, there is connect happening, but more such connect can happen. It's never a wasted opportunity to learn from each other. We need your idiom and you need our, shall we say, our experience. I'm going to, if the presentation can be shared. Thank you, Akhila. Can we go back? Yeah, the first slide. Yeah, no, yeah. So I want to start off by introducing this entire thing. I want to begin with just showing you what we are striving to do to improve whatever procedural literacy. We are doing it across many cities and states, but I picked 4 of them: Ajmer, Bhubaneswar, Pune, and Bangalore. And just to give you a quick, bird's view of what we are doing. And we have been here for the last 5 years. We began the first 3 years where we had committed to, ensuring the full range of what is called social inclusion of about 98,000 urban poor across the 4 cities. And we were supposed to demonstrate the proof of concept. And in the second phase that began in 2019, we were supposed to demonstrate not just proof of concept, but saturation. So we moved from 98,000 to a little over 3.5 lakhs. That's the kind of saturation we are looking at. We were in the first phase, you can see, we were selective, in what we were doing. By second phase, we were saturating in the wards, we were saturating the population, and we were saturating a whole area. We are working with a range of workers, from construction to government to rag pickers to a range of workers, and to very marginal groups. They could be sex workers, they could be transgender, they could be a nomadic tribe, they could be groups that have lost their erstwhile glory, like the artisans, a range of people that are caught in this entire what we call urban vulnerability, and which is social, occupational, spatial, take anything. So Ajmer, you can see everywhere. When you see the figures, it becomes very clear that you're just scaling up to 4-fold, and you're going to communities like artisans, of course, but you're also going to very large communities like BD workers. Literally, the city is run by women, and they're all rolling BDs, not only they, but all their children too. If you go to the next slide and you enter Bangalore, again, a very mega city, very, burgeoning city, but it has its own share of the poor. Here again, we, we in fact reduce the population from 1,59,000 to little over 1 lakh, but that is saturation. We are supposed to reach across all of them. And here again, we are, literally almost 10-fold. We have increased what is called the inclusion target for different sections of workers, construction, domestic workers, all of that. So the whole challenge of, saturation is before us. When you go to the next in Bhubaneswar, again, a similar thing. You have very tiny bastis, very, very tiny, settlements. So it has a sort of old world look also. It doesn't look like the mega cities. Very pretty little, settlements. So literally a 5-fold jump from 15 to 77 settlements, and a big jump in terms of population. And of course, every section has to be covered in those humongous numbers. And everyone needs individual attention. Don't forget, this is highly labor intensive. There are no shortcuts, even with the digital. Even if we use IT solutions, you will not be able to compromise on all the sort of, transactions that are happening. And lastly, Pune, very well-run, corporation, very sort of, in some sense, inclusive of the poor. The next slide, Pune, very inclusive of the poor, but again, you have what is called a greater Pune, That's gone beyond the original traditional Pune. And now there are sections and sections that are coming every now and then, migrating to this place, and again are caught in the vortex of all kinds of deprivations and vulnerabilities. So again, across all these 4 cities, we are looking at 6 milestones in terms of procedural inclusion. The first, of course, is your Aadhaar. You can't open any door without it. You are a persona non grata without an Aadhaar. So that becomes your, shall we say, the key to your citizenship. And then we have got these 5 big pillars, starting with food. That's the highest. Next comes health. Then comes social security. Then comes the entire gamut of civic amenities. And lastly, the livelihood. And in each of them, there are, multiple schemes and services. And all have very good intent. All have very, shall we say, fairly, shall we say, evolved design, and lots of think tanks are behind all of this. It's not just conceived by only a bureaucrat, the Prime Minister referred to as Babu. Not just that, there are also other people around them that are shaping and conceiving. So, and in fact, this entire public service, this entire area today is, there's a lot of what is called private sector participation in it, including all the service centers and call centers they are running. So let's get to what are we trying to do? Let's come to the next slide. Let's define what is procedural literacy. What is the premise that we are to some extent contesting and then defining what it is? The premise is that if you have the intent to promote welfare schemes, that's winning half the battle. And then the other half is taken care of if you're informed and empowered. So this is a big leveler. Once you know everything, then you can, just now Dr. Agnihotri was just citing the example, it's a big leveler. Not only will you voice your demand, articulate your expectations, but you'll also sort of, ensure that it is heard, it is listened to, and it's responded to. So in keeping with this logic, in fact, huge amounts of public funds are spent. And a lot of it is spent on very, very expensive, shall we say, media communication and multimedia communication. Very often, those multimedia communications are messaged through your, charismatic leader and all of that. So that not only are you listening about the scheme, you're also learning it from from at your master's feet, you're learning. So all of that is, assumed. But every time you will find that they'll come back and say, no, it hasn't worked. People are very selective. They decide not to get aware. They don't want to have vaccine, they won't have vaccine. They have their own hesitation and their own resistance. And in fact, in all of this, the worst part of it is what you call half knowledge or half truth. You just fall prey to all kinds of people selling all kinds of unscrupulous dreams and, whatever, easy ways out. And so we were very clear that procedural literacy is not about schemes, not even about the messiah, not even about all the campaigns. It's about knowing the system. It's about being part of the entire process. If you go to the next slide. So what is procedural literacy? It goes beyond making community literate about rationale, intent, substance, benefit. What does it matter? Yes, it's very good that you know it, but can you deal with the entrenched barriers? No, you can't. Why? Because like all efforts, you have the skill to apply gets tested every time you know something. You know it, but can you practice it is the main question. And this is no different. It faces the same kind of challenge. So if you go to the next slide, what is your rationale? And what is that you need to know about the system and the community? Firstly, the provider needs to know that there is something called social marginalization. There's something called multiple vulnerabilities. You have to understand what is intergenerational deprivation. You have to tackle gender, caste. It's not enough to just beam a message. Similarly, the community needs to understand that not everybody that they meet, as part of the process of getting the scheme represents the system. The system is a complex system. There are many checks and balances. We haven't been able to leverage that. You intelligently use the system, they can be molded to your, desire and to your will and whim. So how did that happen? Now, if you look at, I'm giving you two sets of figures. One is exclusion, where in 2015, you have, out of 296, excluded are single women and women-headed households. It doesn't matter the number. What matters is who gets excluded. Okay. Again, after 2019, we get all of them as much as possible. We get them, the Russian card. But you're still leaving out widows and transgender. So surely, without all this kind of, equity, you can't address gender inequality. They're more deeply entrenched than just, beaming something. If you turn to inclusion, everybody's ready for inclusion. And coming forward, you get a similar kind of distortion. You find that in the first phase, one set of workers are excluded, garment workers, domestic workers. You, in fact, go all out of the way to get all of them excluded. You reach a saturation of 98%, 95% inclusion. But when you again put that to test, yes, you're slightly more respectable. From 9%, you drop to 5%. But what does numbers mean in sampling? Is just a jhalak or what is there out there for you. And you are sure enough, your daily wage laborer is gone. Your transgender and sex workers, they're stigmatized. Some of them are hidden. Some of them never see the light of the day. Next slide. So what does this tell us? Surely procedural literacy, is a challenge for all. And it stems from deep exclusion. And there are layers and layers of exclusion. It's not just one thing that you target. It's not a bullseye that you target and you get to the part. So first, of course, it stems from the lack of connect. And however sophisticated the design, however evidence-based it is, however, the best think tanks come together, it's still conceived at the top. And there's no real involvement of the people that you're, talking to or you're reaching out to. And this is also true for the community. They also don't quite understand the system. Very often women face very lecherous men in the system. They're not only oppressive because of the hierarchies that they have, but they're also, plain and simple, lecherous, and, they violate the dignity of women. So, there's a sense of, shall we say, I don't want to engage with this. I'll get a middleman, I'll get somebody else, I'll, get into debt, but I don't want to go to this system. It's not, it's very insensitive to me. So now now comes the crux of the problem. It's all very well to talk about barriers. We can go on talking till cows come home. But then what do you do? And that's where the whole issue of inclusion begins. So if you're looking at it from minimizing all the sort of, the kind of suffering and deprivation they're going through. And if you start doing the process of, inclusion, you'll find that it's like the Kafka, Kafka's entire, what is called the illusion. The more closer you go to something, the further it goes away from you. It's difficult to trap it. So you're finding that even if you start inclusion, all of you sit on a table, you have all your digital tools, the government has given you 100% entry, you're allowed to do anything what you want, you still will be, you'll find we did this. And we found that yes, 41% ranked it as a high priority health. And we went hammer and tongs. 2019, we go back and check, and 47% still, are saying no, we're not getting it, And if you then break that down, look at the set of people, transgenders, garment workers, sex workers, domestic workers, all, majority of them are women-headed, literally women-run families. And clearly, it's, shall we say, feminization of poverty, feminization of vulnerabilities across the board. And no one can even understand all of this. The garment worker leaves at 8 o'clock in the morning. She doesn't barely sees the first set of bright sun. Comes back at 7:30 in the evening, completely hustled, and trying to get things together. The transgender feels alienated everywhere, gets into a rage, gets treated even worse. And the sex worker dare not come out, just lest even there might even be a client in their midst who may recognize her and stigmatize her. So it's all, much deeper than what it sounds. To go to the next slide. If we repeat this entire thing in Pune, it was very interesting. We found all of them, not linked to healthcare. We then went hammer and tong, and literally 81,000 we selected one by one and linked them to different schemes that they needed at that point of time. But it didn't make a difference. You have communities like Vagari and Sikalgar who are extremely marginalized, very vulnerable. They are all like similar nomadic tribes, highly stigmatized. Vagaris, exchange old clothes for utensils, all of that stuff, all that they do from door to door. And of course, the people living with HIV, nobody wants to go, and enroll them, but they don't want to go to the health system. They don't want to be subjected to questioning, and some of it is quite obscene and completely undignified. So clearly, even if you know everything, your enrollment, if procedural literacy, even if you tell them everything and you have all the tools, that's not the be all or the end all. So these are some of the challenges. Now let's just go ahead, go to the next slide, and let's see, what do? We actually demystify the system. The system needs to be humanized. Okay. And you first start with just reducing errors, rejections. They smart under their skin. They say, why are we rejected? Why are we declared as illegal? Why are we declared as, not eligible? So the minute you reduce that error and correct it, they know that not everything has been botched by them. But that's only part of the story. Then we follow it up by shaping the process of inclusion. That's where they learn that, everything is not the fault of the system. There are things that are missing. There are, due diligence. There are due processes, and the system is trapped in its own set of, rules and propriety, whatever, so those are equally important. And they grasp it immediately. So the first thing that you do is you dismantle, you demystify and dismantle the notion. And you do this in multiple ways because every person has to learn. It's not about just getting something done and say, chalo, aapko sab mil gaya, abhi ghar jao, jo bhi karna hai karo. No, this is about learning and transmitting the learning to become like, the walking, talking, let's say an encyclopedia of all that you know. You can have your own version of encyclopedia, Wikipedia, you can have your own pedia because that's the level of learning you get in life. So firstly, just we take all the applications, we do all kinds of things. Somewhere it's remedial, somewhere it's fresh, somewhere it is, changing a norm. So that part of it, everybody goes through. And I'll come to the how we do it. I'm just establishing the, procedural literacy. Every day there is new learning. Every day there is new, shall we say, penitence. And sorry, I didn't know you knew this. I didn't know that you went through this. All of that happens every day. That is at one level. And a second level, of course, is constant dialogue. Very, very important that even as young people, you will be going, somewhere in an auto or somewhere in a public transport, and there'll be somebody asking you for an arm or asking you for help. And your first impulse will be, oh God, let me not get dragged into this. But, very important to engage. You don't have to give, that's your discretion. You don't have to, do an act of charity, but you must ask them who they are and whether they are well and where have they come from, and the whole world opens out to you. So if no conversation goes awry, it's all very useful. So this kind of, conversation happens. And it's very important. There is when, how, what, how, who, and why. And it all gets parceled. I know what and how. The system knows what they're giving and how they're giving. They don't care a damn about who and why. Who are they giving it to and why are they giving it to them? They're not at all concerned about that. Somebody else conceives that. At some level it is conceived. They have been assigned the task of defining what and how. And the community, of course, never misses an opportunity to literally, enlighten them on who and why. There is such a complexity on who and an equally bigger complexity on why. So this dialogue is the fundamental tenet of that entire procedural literacy. You have to demystify every document, every rule, every provision, give it a face, give it a sense of ownership, responsibility, etc. Go to the next slide. So very often these now become problem solving. Now it's very, very important that at this stage you're not just procedural literacy is not just about problem solving. It's more than that. Yes, that helps. Knowing things helps. Being aware helps. Then you demystify the system. Very often systems work in silo. They'll say, you talk to me, and within me, you talk to him or to her, not to anybody else. It brackets you into silos, into cubicles, into little windows. They call it their own version of windows. Very bad. That will just undermine all the effort. So the first thing you have to do is to widen that engagement. You have to keep widening it. The system has many checks and balances. It has within the system a certain, hierarchy. Then beyond the system, it has people looking at accountability, people looking at, shall we say, social justice, people looking at, providing certain sort of, specific help, and, there might be the IT department providing a certain kind of, help to the community. So you have to expose them to all of that. More important, go to the next slide. Move to the next slide. More important, you have to now make it a collective cause. It's not about your scheme or your service or your constituency or your family. It's about addressing the entire system and the bottlenecks. And most important, now comes the bigger challenge. It's all very well to create this kind of momentum, excitement, and all of that. Now you are coming to, one size does not fit all. You have to tailor, your solutions. There are diverse groups, and some of them are so marginal. They're living literally on the margins of the city. There is unspoken untouchability going on there. That they are working with animals, tannery, skin, flesh. So they are just seen as something that somebody who should not be engaged with. So you have to break that entire thing. You now have to hit the bottom of the ladder. There's no point priding yourself in numbers when you're leaving people behind. Go to the next slide. So what does this mean? Within your own group, then you start, now comes the real challenge. Now comes the real contest and the real, shall we say, the proof of the pudding, as they put it. So you're not only talking to the most, we have just named some of the most marginal, most deprived, very poor quality of life, many issues, including substance, mental health, all kinds of issues, violence, abuse, it's a list of it. So now what do we do? How do we handle this entire procedural literacy? While all this is happening, while we are getting all our funders and all our ways and pathways clear, we are now meanwhile setting up the structures. If there's a bureaucracy at one level, then there has to be a parallel bureaucracy at another level. because that's how systematic the system is. It will not allow you to move from here to there because those rules are defined. So in which case you need an equally sort of, shall we say, motivated, equally, informed, and equally persevering, set of frontline, leaders, call them anything, leaders, you can even call them as sort of vanguard, whatever you want to name. Now, that entire thing only works when you have a mechanism to tie them up or to bring them together. If you leave the entire Anganwadi system to just the Anganwadis and you don't tie them up to layers of structures, at the implementation level, operational level, and higher up at the program level, even whatever little is happening falls to pieces. So we conceived of something called the single window, where all the communities that we have trained became the volunteers of that single window. The core team, the project team, is just doing the back end. The front end is entirely done by these volunteers. In the first phase, we were just working with these single windows and we were branching off the volunteers. And we managed to saturate something, we managed to get around, reach out to a little over a lakh of people within a year and a half across the 4 cities. By the second phase, we realized that this will not work. And lo and behold, thanks to, it became a boon during COVID. So what we did was we decentralized the whole single window and created what are called help desks across the settlements. And in the help desk, depending on what the composition, the demographic composition of that settlement, they would enlist the volunteers from each group. It will be represented by the Sansi, somewhere will be represented by the construction workers. So the help desk will literally represent the community, an extension. If there's any, parallel to direct democracy, it is this, the help desk. But while this is happening, that means your applications are going to come in large numbers, your demands are going to come in large numbers, you're going to have people, sort of literally hounding you, ki kya hua, mera kya hua, I need to get this compensation. So the single window got, again, proliferated. We went from what is called a program window, a single window, to setting up something at the government premise, so that anything that gets stuck at our window, the nodal department of the government in Bangalore, it is BBMP, the municipal corporation that is actually running it. In Ajmer, it is the Department of Social Welfare or Social Justice and Empowerment. So different departments have taken over. Then all the stuff that we give goes to them and they process the administrative, sanctions. We found that was also not enough, because then, you're dependent for your uploading to all these so-called outsourced agencies and call centers. So then we decided that we are going to make a bid, and the community made a bid, not us. That's where your IT solution came in. They went in and became part of the, what they call the e-Mitra. We were licensed, the community was licensed as an e-Mitra service provider, a local service provider. This is licensed by the Department of Information, Communication, Technology and Communication. They waived the license fee, fortunately. We didn't have to pay that humongous 10,000. A lot of local philanthropy stepped in, provided them the computers, provided them the thing. The department stepped in, provided them the skill, later provided them the tablets, provided them the biometrics. Now they are, that's one big story that we have. They are uploading. It's another matter that the servers collapse or, crack, don't work as efficiently as they should. There are other, kind of bottlenecks, but the community has now gone completely digital. They have their little, what they do is, we have the e-Mitra facilitators. What the community does is, it goes, enlists the demand, puts it on a Google Sheet. That Google Sheet is transferred to the facilitator. immediately all the documents are collected, we scan them, they're uploaded and they're sent. So, it's, you can see there are 92 help desks across the 4 cities, and there are about an army of 2,000 people representing all the vulnerable groups. We are ensuring that no one gets left behind. Please go to the next one. Even then, technology doesn't solve all the problem. There's something called responsive governance. And there are very powerful interest groups that have penetrated the governance, and they're all men actually. That's another big problem. They're men and they are, sort of very powerful men from powerful groups. So the first thing we have to do is get our mohalla committees, get our ward committees, have our voice, have our say, have our, 2-bit of suggestions. So all that has been happening. There is something called, in Pune, they have this Arogya Koti, of the cluster offices of the PMC, the municipal corporation. The women have entered into that now and, formed their own sort of, convergence. And they have now, not only have they entered, they've taken all the frontline structures with them. They're providing leadership consistently to all the frontline workers. The frontline workers are given targets. You have to mobilize so many people. Tomorrow is immunization day. You better bring everyone out of the wood. It's not that simple as it looks, So the help desk steps in and does that mobilization for them. So they're all part of one, group, let's say, one sort of, and they're also sort of impressing on the men, their ability to make things happen, their ability to, their command over all the local sort of, situations, context, challenges, dilemma. Similarly, in Bangalore, the community is literally monitoring the entire healthcare system. There are about 5 to 6 PHCs catering to 7 lakh communities. They've formed what is called, they've federated that entire thing into what is called a Raksha Samiti and Arogya Raksha Samiti, which sits at the PHC with community representation. And every month they make a plan, they open the budget. No sanctions are made till the community, concedes. If they want an X-ray machine, they have to ask the community and they have to justify why that machine is important and to what extent will they benefit from that machine. So, and of course, we are using all the digital mechanism. And mind you, the system is very, very responsive. I want to make that point clear to all of us. We listen to a lot of the conversation that, shall we say, that is very sort of cynical and very skeptical about the system. There are good people everywhere, and that's our, philosophy. All you have to do is to get a critical number of good people and who know their job, who know their mandate, and who have deep-seated empathy. So, everywhere we are using the digital mechanism, we are registering complaints. You cannot push those complaints away, and say that, they don't exist because they're in hard print and they have been, you've been given a token number. That token number has to be then responded to. And you're also ensuring that your own unity within your ranks is high. That's very important. If you're going to take this procedural literacy to the entire norms of governance, then your own ranks have to be deeply unified. So everywhere, joint committees, joint platforms, all of that. Yeah. Go to the next slide. So while all this is happening, I'm coming to the last slide and I'm going to give a few anecdotes and stuff. You can have, go to the slide before. You can have a challenge like COVID and, you can be zipping on an expressway and then you come to a screeching halt, everything just collapses. And this is where, it didn't matter whether, the schemes were there or the services were there. What mattered was the cadre of, help desk. And no transport, lockdown, no way anybody could reach anyone, let alone, rush relief. Even if you want to, you couldn't. And that's where all of this came handy. And you can see from the data there they went about the community and with our support, but largely the community. And of course, every bit of digital instrument was used, and they went about, ensuring that whatever they were getting, was doubled up, whether it was take-home ration, whether it was your construction workers scheme, whether it was health services, whether it was, Jan Dhan, your bank accounts, your financial assistance, everywhere they used the COVID relief package to in fact scale up the entitlements that they were giving, because nobody could say no in that context. And if they said, "Hum wahan tak kaise pahunchenge?" we had answers for that. So, any structure, any procedural literacy, the test of time is when there is a crisis, and even we did not expect this. We did not expect this kind of a thing. Looking at what was happening and what the way we were doing, in fact, all the relief agencies across the country were, working through us because of our local connect and because of an highly trained, highly motivated, great integrity, cadre of volunteers, workers, leaders, call them anything. And in Bangalore, the last point I want to make, and I'll throw it open for question, they went as far as to say that, let's turn this into what is called a health response run by the help desk. And we were assigned 55 help desk members, were assigned a population of a little over a lakh, but 87,000 people's population had to be reached. 29,000 households had to be reached in what is called 7 wards, and the death figures were skyrocketing, infection was skyrocketing. Bangalore was declared by late July, was declared as the COVID capital of the country. It was fast moving in that direction. People were terrified what would happen in the congested settlement. And we went in with these 55 women, extremely brave, full of apprehension, full of fear. My own team was full of fear. The leader of the team was, the baby was due to be born, and so much hazard for him, for the wife, for the unborn child. But all of that was set aside, and they went in, and you won't believe it. They not only, did an enumeration, a detailed enumeration of all of them within about 3 weeks. They brought them into camps. They streamlined the PHCs. They brought the doctors together. They brought all the, other, CSOs. Somebody gave oxygen. Somebody gave admission into a hospital, tertiary hospital. All of that was, organized. And then the community literally sort of, caught the bull by the horn and screened everybody, tested everybody, quarantined everybody who needed to get quarantined, primary contact, secondary contact. That's an unbelievable story. 55 of them, each one of them took about 2,500 to 5,000 people. And not only did all of that, identified all their comorbidities. Now all that comorbidity treatments are going on as we are talking. School dropouts are being tracked and got back to school. Just about anything anybody wants to do, you just have to, they're like Santa Claus. They're, a bunch of, just like they just weave magic. And that's what they did. And, that's the potential. So you're not just doing procedure literacy. You're actually, making procedures alive, sort of alive, kicking, vibrant, and something that everybody finds as double-edged, no doubt, but if well handled and well harnessed, you can actually stretch the system and make yourself integral to the system and create what is called a day-to-day accountability. That's it. I think I should stop. Non-stop I've spoken.
Thank you so much, ma'am. And I now request the participants to raise their hands, and we'll take up the questions in the respective order.
Even questions or even comments?
I think while the students make up their mind,
Yeah.
I just wanted to make one observation. I think, as they usually say, an ounce of practice is much better than a ton of theory. So, when I teach policy in practice, that's a lot of theory, but what you have seen today is not just an ounce, but a huge amount of practice. So, I think this will be fairly useful when you connect this the policy in practice with what you have learned in the class with what the lecture today talks about. Second is if anyone is interested in these 4 cities for the TD 609, you can kind of make up your mind. But just to inform Akhila, TD 609 is our course where for 8 weeks they work in the field with a organization, usually in rural areas, but not necessarily. So you might find some takers. Just a quick comment. Now over to questioners.
Pavan?
Yeah, thank you very much, especially Agnihotri sir, for arranging this session. I think it is a very wonderful session, ma'am, and
Thank you. Thank you.
it's a very important realization for me because I did my fieldwork in one of the village in Marathwada in Maharashtra. So there is one scheme I was doing survey for ease of living. Maybe you know about it. So all the deprived people I have to survey. So as a participant surveyor, I did surveys. So in that I got found uh, there is one Ujwala gas yojana,
Yes, yes, for
and
trafficking. Yeah, women in distress, is it?
yes.
Yeah.
So for 100 rupees, they will means the government officer will come, fix the setup of gas cylinder in their household, take the photographs, and they will leave. So what happened actually for 10 in the slum area, there was 10 household, and the government person has come, and he gave gas cylinder, and then he took photograph, and then take that gas cylinder with them for 10 households. And we were thinking why this happened, because on the paper it is written they got scheme, they are beneficiaries of the scheme, but at the same time they have not got this uh, these Ujwala gas yojana beneficiaries, because the thing is that they don't know actually what is the scheme,
Yeah.
what is Ujwala gas yojana. And
Okay.
at the same time there are many schemes
Yeah.
with respect to if we say PM Awas Yojana, uh, and there are 16 schemes I was studying where how this is happening. And I was thinking at the rural development people should know the what is the scheme actually, and the inquiry should be there. Means the thing is that officer knows all the scheme, but the people don't know, and what is the solution at the rural level, because we want them to have a standard of living, better standard of living, but at the government record it is there, but
Yeah.
it's not there actually.
Yeah. No, it's like the famous saying, between the cup and the lip, many things happen. So it's not unusual what you're saying. In fact, I just want to give you one anecdote. In Bangalore, there's a girl called Guna, one of the help desk members, and this BPL card is like it's like sort of visiting the god himself or herself. It's so elusive and so difficult. She cracked that code. She knew exactly what was going wrong, and she negotiated the whole thing with the system. She laid out the procedure for themselves and for the system. She, in fact, conceded whatever the system demanded. She conceded, and then she laid out the procedures. And then she went about. First she started off with 94 households. She timed everything. And the idea was that within 3 months, the cards must be sanctioned. Otherwise, people get really frustrated. And she achieved that. And then she scaled it up to 500. And she became like, shall we say, a scheme expert. So in each one, there are those layers that have to be transacted. On some ground, on any possible ground, it just, there'll be a counter query or it will be rejected. So unless you build this set of, shall we say, very highly sort of, trained facilitators, they're like community facilitators. It's like a pipe dream. You can never get it. And, the most of the conversation in the civil society is that, let's legislate, let's create more, let's make it, mandatory, let's, ensure that it's a legal right. But all that they elude, they even, at some point of time, they'll even do away with the legal framework. They'll just dilute it, and say, no, this law doesn't apply to us anymore, So the only way of doing it is creating this kind of, process. Any other observations?
Yashwant.
Hello, good evening, ma'am. First of all, I would want to thank you for the wonderful session.
Thank you.
Because there are so many insights and so many shocking things that have that are new to me, and like that I got. Actually, I want to, like you mentioned in the beginning of the session, the the way forward is like to include both, like the means creating opportunities in the field. So I want to know like what are these opportunities, and like how we student from the student side can contribute can contribute in the program.
So, many ways, Yashwant. There are many ways of contributing. One is, one very obvious way is, actually, there's a lot of middle class opinion, which is very, very sort of, inimical to anything that the poor get. They feel that their own money is being drained, the taxpayers' money is going. They have this mistaken notion, that maybe COVID has slightly sobered them a bit, because they've had to, wash their own vessels and do their own work. But most of the time, they feel all of this sort of, social welfare programs is a burden on them, that they are the taxpayers. They're neither rich, which is true, neither do they have khandani wealth, nor do they have the sort of, the political patronage they think the poor have. They reduce the entire thing to some kind of, charity, act of charity. They don't understand that these are the productive, population. You try removing them, you'll collapse like a nine pin. So the first thing is to take all of that. It's like literally like payback to them, and it's something that they deserve. Surely, if I've slogged as a sanitation worker for 30 years and gone down those horrible manholes for all of you, all of us, then surely I'm entitled to a pension. Is that too much to ask in my old age? Doesn't society owe me that? Without me, you would have been sitting in a whole lot of stench and smell. I've got rid of all that. I've gone in, risked my life, and ensured your quotient of happiness. So the first thing is to change that discourse. You're not doing charity. You're actually, giving them their rights and entitlement. And in a welfare state is an integral, obligation of any state, that exists, whether it is a advanced capitalist state, what is called the first world, or the third world. It doesn't matter. That's both a societal and a state obligation. That's the first thing to do. The second very important way of contributing is bring your skills to the community. They are like blotting paper. Anything you teach them, they absorb. Why? Because that, what is called that, what we call the innate intelligence and wisdom is very high. So please do spend your stone's throw from Pune. You should actually go and more than work with CFAR, you should contribute to the community. All kinds of solutions they're looking for, and there'll be ample opportunities for you to contribute and to learn from them. And that's my 2-second piece of it.
Yes, thank you so much, ma'am. Completely agree to that. and also I also try my best, because I am also from belonging from Pune.
Oh,
So
very good.
so
Yeah.
from in 609, so if possible, I'll also go for that and try to do my part of responsibility. Thank you so much, ma'am.
Yes, we'll be happy to, also pick your brain and your, strength.
Arshi.
Hello, am I audible?
Yeah.
Yeah. Good evening, ma'am. I am Arshi. I'm Tech first year student. First of all, thank you so much for this session. Ma'am, I have two questions. The first question is, ma'am, this like situation of not only the vulnerable groups as you mentioned here is worse. Like there are women also who are suffering. They are well literate and well educated, and still they are suffering from patriarchy, or they are not allowed to show up their skills and all.
Yeah.
So, ma'am, as a volunteer or as a bureaucratic level, on a bureaucratic level, or as a student, what is our responsibility? Like, I have read a few articles, like in this COVID situation, this domestic violence has increased
Yes.
so much. And as you mentioned, the sex workers, they are also suffering a lot in this pandemic. So,
Yeah.
ma'am, what are your views? Like, for the like people who are not identified, like there are women in middle class and upper class as well. They
Yeah.
are also suffering. They are like, how to identify, how to get them out of the situation. This is
So,
my first question, ma'am.
There are two ways of looking at it, Arshi. One, of
Okay.
course, is, when you're doing this entire thing of social entitlements, you're looking at communities most at risk. Why? Because economically, socially, at every level, there is a challenge. You know, um, so at one level, you're looking at the most deprived, the most at risk, the most disadvantaged. But when it comes to women, I agree with you. It cuts across. It's not just about only the poor. Even the rich have a terrible time.
Yeah.
So, so couple of ways of doing this. We did it in the early phase, but as we went on and we went deeper and deeper into the community, we sort of, steered away from there. So one part of it is to, do a lot of what is called, build what are called volunteer groups. Within the bureaucracy, we often get things like, मैंने अगले बार मेरा अपना बीवी को भी लाऊं, क्योंकि आप लोगों के साथ मिलके उनका भी मतलब उनको भी सीख मिलेगा. She'll also understand the work I'm doing. I'll bring my daughter, I'll, send her. So there's a lot of that kind of, that's happening at one level. At another level, the use of media, the use of social media, the use of, all of that to reach out to these women and to constantly, like now it's become mandatory. Whenever, the media reports on a suicide case, it's mandatory to publish over there. Where can you go if you are harboring such, desperate thoughts? So they'll give you the address for suicide prevention, centers. So in your own Facebook, in your own sort of social media circles, to create that kind of, shall we say, some kind of a safety net around them would be worthwhile. And, to a great extent, uh, uh, just to get to liberate themselves from the kind of, harassment and the kind of, oppression that they face, and their own sense of, poor sense of self-worth, it's absolutely essential that, what two things we do. One is that, many of the work that we do, particularly in the area of water, sanitation, and hygiene, you can't insulate the poor and the rich. You can't, because your drains are running across. Your waste is piled up in the middle of the, in between the basti and the marketplace. So a lot of the, residential welfare association is one way of, working around with them. And within that, conversations around these issues begin. But there are, both within the government program, and within the CSO community, that is the civil society community, there are very strong, both service delivery is being given, and very strong sort of, collectivization of all these women as survivors of violence, survivors of, acid attack, survivors of, witch hunting. All of that is happening. Survivors of terminal diseases. A lot of support groups are coming up, and I think that's the way forward for them.
Okay.
To constantly talk about the support groups and whatever you're speaking about.
Ma'am, seminar, you have mentioned a term like feminization of poverty. Ma'am, I just want to understand.
Say that again. Say that again.
A feminization of poverty.
Now,
ma'am, what is that? Could you please elaborate?
That, the face of poverty is women. You can see all four of them. Transgender, trans female, sex workers, largely female sex workers. There are male also, but this is largely female. Your garment workers, entirely women driven, entirely. And they all lost their jobs in COVID. They all, one and all, have lost their jobs. So you can imagine their plight.
Yes.
All of them are women. So what is the common denominator? Poor women.
Poor.
Yeah?
Okay.
So the poverty is not just about income. It's about your entire, the gender hierarchy and the inequality. She has to work here, she has to work there, she has to raise the children, she has to meet the needs of the family. The men are, some are around, some are just not around. And now, of course, they're staring at complete, loss of everything.
Yeah. Thank you so much, ma'am. Looking forward to work with you. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Ma'am, we have one last question from Yashwant.
Yeah.
Yashwant.
Thank you, ma'am. My question is like in seminar you mentioned about school dropout rates, and in one of our course field research methods, like we have studied in the literature review part the effect of COVID-19 on the dropout rates of children, and it basically covers the like undernourished and the like those children like who don't have much resources. So, ma'am, in that I come across one instance in which like in one of the article there like one student who have to leave the school because of the like situation, like in COVID-19 he lost his father, because of which entire responsibility of his all the family falls on his shoulders. So because of that he have to leave the school.
Yeah.
So there were several instances because of COVID-19 occurred. So what to do, like health any such like come across, and if yes, so what could be done in such, like how to bring them back to school?
Correct. No, it's really a harrowing problem. And let me tell you, it's not as simple as just dropping out. That is one part of it. What you're saying, a situation where they can't continue, they become the bread earner and they get in. There's another situation where they've actually, because of this, have gone into earning. And when the family says it's fine, you don't have to earn, please go back to school, we'll manage, they're now refusing because they've, sense the power of money and sense the power of work. And schools are not the best place. I had a nightmare in my childhood. I don't know how many people have enjoyed school. So, but we manage, we get through it because we are set in a particular context and we have little choice but to go through the grill. But these children are not going back. And in Bangalore, there was actually a teenage murder by a teenager murdering a teenager, and it became very clear that there are many, many dimensions to this problem. It's not about getting your enrollment rate, your data and your indicators. That's only the tip of the problem. There is problems of delinquency, there's all of this, and children growing up too fast, getting into the adult world too fast, not having enough time to savor their own, experiences, all has very, great social consequences. So we really have a problem on hand, and we should all volunteer time to, addressing each of these problems, Yashwant. There is nobody, there's nobody there sitting and delivering you of the problem. You have to shape yourself as somebody who is to deliver the problem. So now these help desk women are literally getting them back to school, counseling them, talking to their parents. Their parents have no option. They have to charge out by 8 o'clock to make whatever little living is happening. So, it's all a vicious cycle. So unless you have, now with the poor, we have realized, it's all about building carers, caregivers. It's not about money alone. It's not about just economic empowerment. There are many, many other, life challenges that we are facing. And mind you, Yashman, the middle class is also very soon slipping into all that. It's not very far when we'll also be facing the kind of, unemployment, the kind of job loss. All of that is, also going to haunt us.
Completely agree, ma'am. Thank you so
And
much,
in the
ma'am.
urban context, has nothing to do with income. It's to do with your vulnerability. You are being looked after by a single parent. You are, literally in the category of an orphan by the legal language. One parent is not a parent. She can only do this much and not more. So there are levels and levels of vulnerability.
True, ma'am. Thank you so much, ma'am.
Thank you so much, ma'am. So we come to the conclusion of this session.
Thank you.
I request Agnihotri sir to present the vote of thanks, and then we shall conclude with this session. Sir.
Yeah, thank you very much, Akhila. That was quite educative. Am I audible?
Yes.
No, because it says your internet connection is unstable. So I wonder. So first of all, thank you very much for this talk where you have showed them the reality and the reality as it is going to unfold as well. But then you are also showing them how one can be, if one wishes to, a part of the solution rather than just part of the problem. I'm also happy that we already got a couple of people to say that they would think of TD 609 course with your group, because what happens is, I mean, you have to appreciate that we have a set of students who have a professional engineering degree, but they have chosen a path which is less trodden by coming to Sitara in any case. So I think for them, working in a setup where they already have facilitators, so the facilitators also act as a bridge between a enthusiastic student and actually marginalized community. So I look forward to maybe at least some of our students working and then coming back and presenting it and probably motivating maybe more other people to become part of the solution. One small point I want to add, that it's not necessary that everybody physically goes to where, the areas where you're working and lend support. You could also figure out what kind of, IT support, training support, etc. could be given. So that's something which we can discuss separately. But thank you for a very stimulating talk. And I'm sure the Sitara students will benefit from it, and also my students in the course on public policy theory and practice, because I think you showed them a good facet of the public policy in practice. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you. I'm really deeply honored and deeply moved. And all of you are at any point of time open to come and work with us, make us part of your own process also, make the community actually part of your own process. And that will be a great honor for all of us.
Sure.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. And thanks
you,
everybody
Abhinav.
for attending. And I hope you enjoyed it.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And I think we could give our clap in the reaction side. Now we have digital clapping as well. So thank you very much. And thanks, Abhinav.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.